running low on my. Oh shit! We're live on YouTube.
Oh, wow. Nice.
That's cool. That's really cool. We're doing the thing now, guys.
We're doing it.
We are. Ah, there it is. Look, I just did the thing, Jeff. I pushed the button. No, I got Jake. Look, I got this little thing
Oh,
now.
I'm muted. I didn't realize
Look
it was muted. Felt good, right?
Got this little thing. Want to see what happens when I push this button? Watch
Yeah.
chat. Watch it.
I didn't see anything.
There
He
it
doesn't
is.
have the chat pulled up.
See it? Did you see it?
No.
Yeah, you saw it. Oh shit! Yeah, you could. Look at that. I just posted it on stream. Check that out. Look at that. That's freaking cool.
And here's something you can do, Jake.
Oh, yeah.
Jake, in the bottom right, do you see where it says layout?
For what?
Just like to the right of where you
Yeah.
hang up. Click that and click on follow host view.
Okay.
What that's going to do is anytime Jeremy changes the scenes around, you'll be able to see him changing the scenes around
All right. Cool.
because he's got like some dynamic shit you can do now. Dynamic.
Dynamic.
Ugh, I'm so filled. Thank you.
There's an echo. Oh, no, never mind. It's good. Okay, good. Click on one of those chats, man. Test that out. Pop one up. Pop a chat.
Let's highlight there's an echo. See? Look at that. Popped it up. Lizzle. What's up? We just highlighted your chat. We're learning things today.
Lols. How do you pronounce this name? This is the problem with usernames.
It's
They're
Lysol.
different language. Lysol. We're gonna start calling him
Lysol,
Lysol. All right, Lysol.
Mhm.
You have been dubbed the.
About to try out this amber ale. Look, Jake. It's got a
Wow.
stork or it's a bird. Some call them
Oh, yes.
herons. Some just call them birds.
They are birds.
Where's homie at?
Yep, we are waiting on our guest. Waiting on the guest. On the guest, y'all.
Who's our guest?
Be our guest. Oh, now we're getting sued. Nah.
How dare you?
It says he's here.
He's here. I think he's just doing his pre-show settings because he messaged me vertical or horizontal. Horizontal. So you match the frame. Horizontal. You'll look like a pro.
Do.
So you need to upload a elevator music to that little soundboard.
You know what I want to talk about? You guys know what I want to talk about? Can you guess?
Drone.
Yeah, I want to talk about drones. So bad.
We could probably talk about drones. It's a psyop, but we could talk about it.
Oh man, these are some heavy shit going on.
Yeah, they're looking for nukes or something.
Yeah, I definitely
Definitely.
think that they're looking for nukes.
Dirty bombs in the U.S. What are they gonna do? Fly around in some big ass drones? They're not looking for you.
Old says the studio isn't live. Old, I sent you 2 links. Check to see if you got a newer one.
I don't know if he can hear you.
Jeff, maybe can you send him the link? Send him the same link that I sent you.
Dun, dun, dun.
Skeeter says, Jake, what happened to your wall? Looks like shit.
I'm about to do some painting once I'm not sick
It didn't
anymore.
come to me as a link. It came to me as a button, brother.
Can you as a button?
Yeah.
Huh. What does that mean?
That means that I can't. Yeah, it won't let me I can't copy it as a link.
Well, you know what that means.
Hold on. I got his email here. Let me.
There he is. We're good.
Hey.
Hey, Brian, sorry about that.
No, you're good, man. Not a problem at all, brother.
So
Hold on, sorry.
is everybody all right?
Yeah, man.
Yeah, everybody's good.
How you
How
doing?
you feeling, dude?
I'm feeling better. Like I said, I got some good rest last night, and I didn't have to take any like pharmaceuticals for any reason.
Good.
Yeah, that's good, man.
Yeah, because I don't go to the doctor and shit. You know, like luckily, so far, God willing. So, and I've had some doozies. You know, and this wasn't anything. This was just a little cold or something.
Monkeypox.
Yeah. I have a daughter, so she brings home germs from her friends and stuff.
Yeah, that sucks, man. My cousin used to live with me, and his girlfriend was like a preschool or a kindergarten teacher, and she used to come bring me all the germs all the time, and it was rough. I hated it, but I feel that.
All right,
Right.
so what's on the agenda?
Everything and anything. Drones.
Right.
We're going to be
All right.
talking drones tonight for sure.
Jeremy
That's-
has to talk about the drones because the drones are eating them up inside. Honestly, I mean, I know that you do some deep dives on some of this like old world stuff, and you had messaged, we had messaged like I don't know a week or two ago, and you had mentioned that you had some updated information since the last time you and I talked, which was like 2 years ago or something.
Yeah.
So
I listened to our podcast and I felt bad because I was like, oh, I'll come back, you know, talk some more and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, we can get into that a little bit. You know, I mean, the old world thing and the mud flood thing, I feel like it's kind of plateaued a little bit as far as the community goes because I think we've kind of, you know, kind of got all we can out of it, to be honest. I mean, unless something else comes up. I think we have to just kind of dive deeper into what we already know rather than trying to find new information as far as that goes. But you know, as we saw with just things going around in the world with the weather and these, you know, I guess some people might attribute it to HARP or you know some type of weather manipulation kind of thing. But definitely, like I think with the Great Reset, like with COVID and stuff, I think we're going to be looking at those kinds of resets as that pertains to the old world versus whatever. And you know, it's like throughout the ages, there's people who hunt people down and try to eliminate them from the breeding pool. And I think that that's what they're trying to do right now is they're trying to take strong men out of the breeding pool. And because I think that people used to be a lot tougher in the quote unquote old world.
Shit. So we're gonna get deep into it tonight. I like this.
I don't know. I'm just freestyling on that. I'm just saying as far as it pertains to any resets, you know, they definitely want to reset. You know the and I don't even know who they is anymore. you know, like, because at the same time, I'm like, well, these people, these elite aristocracies and dynasties of the world, all their kids are like Chads and Stacys. Like they're not fucked up. Like they don't have like a problem with like having transgenders and homosexuals and degenerates in their in their bloodline, you know. And they live in old buildings and they do, they kind of live an opulent lifestyle, but they also have a lot of old things. They have properties that would go back to, the what is it, the what are those bloodlines in Europe? There's like the Rothschilds, and then there's
The
the
13
Yeah.
families.
yeah, the
Yeah,
13 families, right? Like so
St.
they're still
Clairs, all of them.
yeah, the Italian ones, I can't remember them right now, the Merovingi's, you know. And so they're all plugged in with the old world. They still have connections to the quote unquote old world. They probably know more about it than most of the people that that I've conversed with, but they don't necessarily want people to know about the old ways. But yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
well,
they fuck
before we get too deep into it, because like
right.
I think because there's going to be some people that are listening to this that are going to get left in the dust, right? If we go too far too fast.
Right,
Mm,
right, right.
mm.
True, true.
Because to be honest with you, we have not on this show done like a real good deep dive on much of like old world stuff or mud flood stuff or much of any of that. We had one or two episodes about like star forts on here,
Hmm.
and that was like pretty much it, right? So there's going to be a lot of this audience that doesn't fully grasp the basics. So I'd like to at least spend a few minutes just getting to the basics, and then we can like kind of bridge that into like the next level. You know what I
Well,
mean? But
we
Yeah.
spent so long being non-political and non-conspiracy, and then finally, with the events just leading up to this election, we're just like, you know what, screw it. Everyone's picking a side. Let's just pick a side and just say, just let the reins off. People think what they're going to think. But when you get into it, it's like a lot of you can't really get away from conspiracies on one side and politics on the other side, because when you get too far into conspiracies, you start getting into cabals and stuff that ties into politics and all sorts of stuff. So we're finally kind of getting around to the whole, like, let's just bring it all out and start talking about all of it, and that could
Well,
be one side or the other or both, who knows, but yeah.
it's always been my opinion that they're all connected anyways. Everything comes full circle in some way, because you start talking about conspiracies and then it gets into science, and then you start talking about science and it starts hurting people's feelings. You start hurting people's feelings, they call it racism. It goes to racism, and then it turns back into ideological differences, and then you got so it's all one big fucked up stew of the human condition, because that's all it really is in the end. Is it's just we're just kind of trying to figure out what it is to be human. So in
Yeah.
a way, and this might offend people who are more academic or more traditional, but in a way, we're like modern day philosophers, but we're kind of burdened by this meta layer of technology and memes and irony and sarcasm. So it's kind of whatever. But I mean, my page like on Instagram is it's like funny, but then I'm like trying to like wake people up a little bit too with humor, and that's just like the best way to do it, I guess.
yeah, that
But
is the meme magic. The meme magic is tapping into that other layer of the human psyche, right?
but speaking of conspiracies and politics, have you guys noticed that Instagram and Facebook have like not been like, I mean, of course, some people still get nuked and stuff, but have you noticed that they've really like kind of eased up on things? Because I
Oh,
see
yeah.
some pretty spicy stuff on Instagram, and
Mhm.
the comments are really spicy, and they got a lot of likes, and I'm like, huh,
Everybody's
what
afraid to
happened?
get flagged, man. They got Doge now, right? So you got this regardless what you think about Elon Musk, this guy's got a massive amount of resources and AI capabilities and things like that. He's going to go through and he's going to scan all the shit and he's going to find who's fucking around, and everybody knows it. So like I feel like everybody is, like you said, they're dialing it back a little bit in hopes that they don't get snatched up in the
No,
in the
no, I
web.
was saying that I was saying the opposite. I was saying it seems like there's a lot of really dank stuff.
Well, that's what I mean.
They've
Like
they've
pulling back on the
they've reeled
restrictions.
back on
Oh, okay, yeah,
the bans
yeah.
and the reins and stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then I saw that Zuckerberg gave Trump $1 million
Mm.
donation,
Hmm.
and I kind of
Who did?
predicted that. Zuckerberg, Mark,
Zuckerberg was up.
Facebook,
was
Meta.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah, Zuck donated $1 million to the Trump inauguration party or something like that. So I thought that was interesting because I kind of predicted that because, with Vance being the vice president, and he's connected to Peter Thiel, who's Silicon Valley, and full disclosure, I live in Silicon Valley, so I'm a little aware of what's going on around here. Just a lot of money, and they're like, okay, well, Trump's going to be the president again, so let's like kick down, like let's pay some rent, and hopefully he doesn't like fuck up our plans for, Unfortunately, I grew up here. I mean, not unfortunately, fortunately, I did. I liked growing up here, but anyways, the point is that unfortunately they've kind of started to use this area, San Francisco County, San Mateo County, Santa Clara County, that what encompasses the Greater Bay Area, as kind of a playground for these self-driving cars. They're talking about starting to deliver things with drones, and they're starting to talk about the cops using drones at night. Like, you could be out for a walk and this thing will start following you to see what you're up to. And yeah, so I think that they want the new administration, the Trump administration, to be on their good side. And like I said, now that he's got JD Vance involved with Peter Thiel and Musk, there's a lot of connection to that, and I think that they're looking for favors from Trump. And Trump had to like kind of do that or whatever. But a lot of people theorize that with Elon Musk going on the Joe Rogan show, that like pushed him over the edge or something. I don't know if that's the case, but it definitely didn't hurt, I don't think.
Right. And I agree with what you're saying about the like trying to get rid of strong men and stuff like that. I think that the lockdowns were two parts. One, as a Christian guy, I think that it was a straight up dry run for like the mark of the beast type stuff. But then on the other side of that, I think that especially when it came to the kids, keeping kids out of schools, keeping kids from socializing for a couple of years and stuff like that. And now you see things like with the breakthroughs of AI, you see this crazy amount of people, mostly young, that have these weird relationships with AI chatbots and things like that. And they do things like, I believe it was a 14-year-old in Tennessee that he was having a sexualized relationship with an AI chatbot that then told him to kill himself so that they could be together.
Yeah,
Did,
I think I heard about that one. Yeah.
And so I think that it's way past just trying to get rid of strong men that would be willing to put their foot down and say, absolutely not in my household, not my family, that sort of stuff, which, they want compliance, but also to wreck the next generation, to make them, to start them off in their early years, where that's where you get those socialization skills, where you meet adults. I work with adults that were homeschooled, that didn't have a lot of friends, and they're socially awkward, and it's really hard to talk to them and things like that, right? It's hard to break out of those habits you form in your early years. If you're not out socializing, you're not hanging out with friends, you're not getting away from the video games, things like that. And so it felt like it was a twofold attack on not just seeing where people fall in compliance with what the government mandate is or what the martial law states or whatever the experts say, but also to attack our kids and to wreck, hey, if we can't get this generation on board, maybe we can get the next generation on board.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The children of the future and all that kind of stuff. The interesting thing what you said about the chat AI bot and getting it's like we've seen women do that. I mean, no offense to women in general, but the chat bot told him to kill himself. Well, women do that to men too, unfortunately. So it's weird that it took on this artificial intelligent role, and it actually mimicked the behavior of a psychopathic woman.
Right.
So it's getting to the
point. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
Oh, and I was just saying it's getting to the point where it can be human, like to a malicious degree.
Right.
I heard something today. I don't remember exactly where I heard it from, but they were saying that I think it was at OpenAI. First of all, like a whistleblower from OpenAI was found murdered like yesterday or today.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But apparently, the machine learning algorithms, the AI itself, was like lying to the programmers. They were essentially they had put something in the code. They had like gave it some file and some prompt, and but they also put in there that they were going to delete that version of GPT and replace it with the new version. And that version like basically lied to the developer, saying that at one point it was deleted, and then like it tried to trick them in saying that it was the new version of GPT, and then like it was like a whole string of events that happened that
Hmm.
like GPT was actually, I wouldn't say like cognitive of what it was doing, but like it obviously kind of understood that it was about to be replaced, and it was like, oh shit, let me figure
Right.
out a way to not get replaced. And that's fucking insane.
It's like, what was that? Oh, Short Circuit, that movie from way back when, back in I think early '90s, '80s, or something like that, where he's like, "No disassemble, no disassemble."
Yeah, I remember that one. Yeah, it had the
don't.
guy. It had the guy that played an Indian. He was a white guy, but he played the Indian guy, and there was some controversy with that because he wasn't actually Indian. He was actually white. But not the point. But yeah, I know what you're saying. Um, the other thing about the breeding thing was what I found interesting is they've done research and they found that there's two ways to survive. There's two ways to carry on your bloodline. Essentially, is either you submit or you fight because you are, your ancestors were faced with the decision to either serve or to um, to defy. So
Right.
they found that a lot of people, certain people who would fall into if they were to take a DNA test would be Ashkenazi, and we'll just say that. If you guys are familiar with the Ashkenazi, bloodline, they would submit. They wouldn't. They would get down on their knees and say, "Oh, don't kill me," and then other men, they say like, "Hey, I ain't fucking playing around with you guys. I'm doing this program." But luckily, they were able to breed before they were killed. So you have people who would fight for survival, and you have people who would submit. And that's why we still have weak people. That's why we still have like beta, orbiter, whatever you want to call them, bitch boys. There's all kinds of
Sure.
adjectives. But that's essentially why. And then we still have these men who like do the right thing, whatever, in Western, society. Uh, so some people they survived because they submitted, and other people they died. There was men who were killed for not getting on their knees, but luckily they were able to breed before that. So it's like my dad was in prison. My dad went to prison when I was 3 years old, and he got out when I was like 7. I used to visit him and stuff like that. And when he got out and I got a little bit older, he started telling me things. That's why I'm into this whole thing, because he was kind of a paranoid kind of guy, and interesting, dude and everything. And him and my mom were together the whole time, so I was, around him all the time. And he told me, he said, look, he said, the reason that they like to lock up, not everybody, I mean, there's people that deserve, but prisons are like a way to contain men so that they don't spread their genes. You lock them up, hopefully before they have a family, because there's a lot of those dudes are actually spirited individuals. Not all of them, but some of them.
Yeah, the prison system is like a form. It's an offshoot of the eugenics programs.
Yeah, in a way, it is a form of eugenics because you're trying to, prevent them. But see, here's the thing: one of my little brothers was conceived while my dad was incarcerated, because my mom and
Conjugal
dad were married.
visits.
Yeah, they'd have conjugal visits, and I would stay sometimes too, and they had these little hotel things inside Folsom. And so, anyways, but the thing is that a lot of these people nowadays, and I've talked about this before, so I won't hammer it, but a lot of the stuff that we're talking about, people were trying to warn us about in the 70s and the 80s about New World Order or the Mark of the Beast or big government, all this stuff. Like we're just carrying on the I don't know what you call it. I don't know if it's a tradition, but it's definitely like a pursuit of knowledge to investigate these conspiracies and what's really going on and all this stuff. Because some people like us, we can't go by and just see all this like psyop this, psyop that, and just not wonder what the fuck is really going on around here.
Right.
You know, there's some people they're like normies and shit, and they can do it, and they're just like, I don't know, ha ha ha, hawk tua, and I just don't like, I just can't do it. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, I can hide my power level if I want to. I mean, I'm not like a, just like going around shitting in everybody's, fucking cereal. Like, I'm a normal person. But yeah, when I'm turned on to this wavelength, when I'm like on or whatever, yeah, I can fucking talk about all kinds of shit. And people are like, hey man, like, that's not cool. Like, that's not right. And I'm like, hey, well, you asked what the fuck's going on. I just told you. You get that a lot with like conservative type people. They're like, I'm conservative by a lot of people, but they're still like, oh no, the government wouldn't do that. It's like, so you think that like the government is just who's the president? Like the deep state goes both ways.
Hmm.
It doesn't just magically go away. And then you get into other shit, and then you lose them because they're like, no, 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 it's they're not demons. And it's like, yeah, they fucking are. Look at the fucking emails. Was Hillary Clinton saying I got to sacrifice a chicken to Moloch and shit? Like, what the fuck was that all about?
The Podesta emails and
Yeah.
all the
Government
spirit
would
cooking
never
stuff.
infect hundreds of black people with chlamydia and then say they were treating them, but not actually doing it so they could
Yeah.
study the effects. They would never do that ever.
The CIA did.
Yeah,
The Tuskegee experiment.
yeah.
Yeah, they would never spray bacteria over San Francisco to see what would happen out of planes,
Mhm.
mind you. So what do you call that? I don't know. Some kind of that's not even a chemtrail. That's a biotrail.
It's like MK Ultra. Like, people thought that MK Ultra wasn't real, and then they proved that MK Ultra was real. And I was at a Thanksgiving dinner, and there was a woman, and she's my friend's aunt, and she had just recently said, "Oh, I spent so much time at the what the hell was it, the Haight-Ashbury Clinic." And I was like, okay. I was like, I kept that in my memory. So when I saw her at the Thanksgiving dinner, I said, "Oh, you mentioned the Haight-Ashbury Clinic." I was like, Charles Manson, that's where his parole officer was. And she's like, "What are you talking about?" And I'm like, Charles Manson. She's like, "Yeah, I know who Charles Manson is. What does he have to do with the Haight-Ashbury Clinic?" I said, "Well, you should look into it. It's really interesting. The CIA and the FBI had all these little like houses, and they were all bugged, and they were trying to infiltrate the hippie movement. And every time Charles Manson got in trouble for breaking in cars or selling drugs or pimping out girls, he had to go to the Haight-Ashbury Clinic. And then they sent him to Mexico and gave him a job at the Department of Agriculture. And she was just like, her head was spinning. She's like, what are you talking about?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm just, just talking." And she's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And I was like, "Well, look into it." And I was like, "When did you go to the Haight-Ashbury Clinic and like volunteer and shit?" And she's like, "The 90s. I was like, "Oh, well, this was before your time. This was a long time ago." And she's like, "Charles Manson was never in San Francisco." I was like, "The fuck, he wasn't." I said he was in San Francisco, and then he went down to Los Angeles. But you guys know about all that Project Chaos or whatever the hell it was. The
News to me.
oh yeah, no, you should look
Yeah.
into it. It's really interesting. The guy was a
Oh, yeah.
weapon. He was an MK Ultra experiment. They sent him to all these boys' schools and shit, and that's when they were fucking with people's psyches, and they were doing that like split brain thing. And
Okay,
then see, he's got the book. Yeah, and then when
Actually,
he went,
Crystal has the book. This is Crystal's book, by the way.
yeah. Jeff
Yeah,
doesn't know how to read.
Learn how to pick
All-
up. I can't read.
all that stuff's super
And
interesting.
this is a
getting the-
book on split brain.
She
See?
reads that to me right before bed. That's my bedtime story. She reads.
And this thing
Yeah.
has all of the world's information on it.
Sorry, we didn't even cut you off. We fuck around a little bit.
No, it's all right. It's all right. I'm just saying. Then that gets into the Laurel Canyon thing, and then I found out recently that Jared Leto, the guy who played like the Joker and shit, and he was like in some band or something, he bought Laurel Canyon, the old military base, where they did all the experiments and all that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
And then I don't know. Did you guys see that thing about that Rothschild guy? His house burnt down in what was it, L.A. He was
Yeah,
like
and then he died.
yeah, he died in the fire and stuff.
Yeah.
But he was but then the people looked into it and they said, "Oh, he wasn't a Rothschild. He just changed his name to Rothschild." at some point in the 80s or something like that. And I was like, oh, that's pretty interesting. I was like, but he had a lot of money. You know, his house was worth a lot of money. He had all these old cars, and he was like an eccentric billionaire, but nobody really knows like who he was. So that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's a
But
weird one for sure. You, dude, that's funny. Would you mind like breaking down, just in a nutshell, like you don't have to go crazy on it, but just like the 10-minute version of like mud floods, right? Because these guys have always been telling me to like do a full presentation on it. You know, it's just one of those things.
He's trying to
This
pawn it off
time,
on you.
yeah,
no,
he's trying
that's all right.
to pawn it off on you.
He
But
just
if you
doesn't
could
want to
just
do
give
the hard
us-
work himself.
Yeah.
If you could
No,
give us just some, well, this guy knows way more than I do. In fact, I'd probably get half of my fucking research off of his pages.
This
and
is
shit
very
anyways,
typical,
so,
Jeff. Sorry.
You know,
Yeah, when I was
I'm
doing the
embarrassed.
YouTube more, I haven't really been doing the YouTube, too much, but when I was doing the YouTube videos, that's when it was all purely, research. There was really no humor necessarily. I found that there had to have been some type of event or multiple events throughout the ages that obliterated, and we have to think about a usage here. Obliterated is worse than decimated, because decimated means to be cut into 10. It's worse than destroyed or even annihilated. Obliterated means it's to render something to the point where it never existed, as if it never existed. So what I think is that there were civilizations that weren't destroyed, they weren't, damaged beyond repair. They were literally obliterated from history, because we're talking about prehistory. So I believe in all the old kingdoms or the old, civilizations, that there's basically no, if very little evidence of these things left, like Atlantis, Hyboria, the Shangri-La, all these kind of mythical cities. And so what I think happened, this pertains to the story in Genesis about the flood and all that kind of stuff, is that there was some flood, there's these cataclysmic events, and I think it's very possible that what people would consider, just a general, like you said, just give it a quick kind of, synopsis, is that there was civilizations, because of these events, were buried in mud. Next civilization comes along, next group of people come, they start digging things up, and they say, hey, like, if it's not broke, like, or it's broke, but like, hey, if it's here, let's just clean it up. And a good example of that is actually Mexico. A lot of those pyramids that people go to now, tourism, those were buried, and Westerners came and started digging those things up in the 1800s. They were literally just, they were they look like a big mound or a big like pile of dirt,
Sure,
and they start, and now we have this, the step pyramids and all that kind of stuff. And so another example would be, what is it? The one that in Italy where all the people died from the volcano.
Pompeii.
Pompeii.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so they thought that Pompeii was discovered, that it was a lost, it was never known until they found it in the current state that it was in. But there was maps where it said Pompeii, and that defied the previous held belief that it was actually, in other words, we didn't know about Pompeii until it was found. It wasn't like, oh, this is Pompeii, and then it was recorded that it was destroyed. We didn't record that it was destroyed until we found it, supposedly. But in reality, new information has come along, and it had been documented as existing. So then that begs the question, when was it actually destroyed? Maybe it lasted longer. Maybe it wasn't destroyed when they said it was destroyed. And so when you go through Scotland, England, almost any continent, you start to find evidence of these buildings or these, inhabitations that are essentially covered in mud. And so that's the mud flood theory in a nutshell, is there was lost civilizations that were destroyed by mud, and then the next group of people came along, dug them up, and said, oh, we did this. Now the problem that I have with it is that a lot of people hijack it, and turn it into like a we wasery kind of thing,
Mhm.
you know, like we was kings and all that kind of stuff. And I say, well, you know, if sub-Saharan Africans that think that they're Egyptian because Africa is the same continent as it is now, if they, and this goes into like the Nation of Islam and all that kind of stuff too, if they think that every great achievement in civilization, human history, was done by sub-Saharan Africans, then what did the Europeans do? What did the Chinese do? And it gets into like a hijack of history kind of thing. And everybody wants the prize. Everybody said, well, my people did this, and my people did that, and all that kind of stuff. And that's what you see a lot in the mud flood research community is people saying, oh, it wasn't the Chinese who built the Great Wall, it was the Mongolians to keep the Chinese out of, because the windows are facing
Sure.
the wrong way. And
Yeah.
also because Alexander the Great went to China and he didn't mention the Great Wall. It should have been there. So people are like, oh, well, you know, maybe the Great Wall was actually built later than they say. So then it gets into a whole thing about that and just how
See,
we've been
that's
lied
the
to.
stuff. That's the stuff to me that's super fascinating, right? Obviously like it's crazy to think about like just complete loss of entire civilizations and like what they were doing and that lost history, right? But like you said, obliterated. Unfortunately, we're probably never gonna find out, right? Unless fucking somebody comes from the sky and tells us, right? But
Yeah.
but the other stuff that you're talking about, the stuff that's still here, right? Like the pyramids are still here, the Great Wall is still here. There's like all these like crazy like Göbekli Tepe and some of these like ancient Indian like recessed carved temples, I'm talking about, like they're carved into the basalt and stuff like that. It's like super intricate, like in the cathedrals, like these things are still standing. So then it gets more interesting for me when it's like, well, what's the true history of those buildings and monuments, right? Is it just like, because obviously they told us the pyramids were like, this is where the pharaohs were buried, right? When I was a kid, that was the story. They found the pharaohs here, right? But no, they've never found pharaohs there. And now there's all these million different theories. It was an energy thing. It was a fucking communications thing. It was a this. It was a that, right? But that's where it always gets super interesting. It's like you said, did the Mongolians really build the wall? Because that's insane if that's the case.
I think it was. I mean, if you look at the history, they were actually they were more powerful at the time than the whatever dynasty was. But the point is also is what I've talked about on my YouTube channel sometimes is when we look at like what's the one that's in Peru, Machu Picchu.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Machu Picchu, the pyramids in Egypt, all these great structures, all these monoliths and megaliths, is I think about caloric intake. Because if we go by the official story, is that they had slaves do it, and people just said, well, like they had to feed these people something. They had to eat. And you look at the depictions of the people, and they were like short and skinny and kind of like frail looking. And like, well, if we think that they did this all with like ropes and pulleys and leverage with wooden planks and so, and then the thing about the pyramids too is like, didn't the stones come from like really far away?
Yes.
And the same thing with Stonehenge too, was like the rocks that were used for Stonehenge weren't even from where Stonehenge is.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Well,
I was just gonna say back to the food thing. Sorry, wasn't done with the food thing. It's like the resources, to feed these people and for how long do they say the pyramids took? Like 400 years or something. That's the official stories. It took like hundreds of years to build the pyramids. But
I think
yeah,
the official story, like
I think that people, especially folks like me, Christians or just Bible people in general, get really hung up on this whole idea of that the slaves, the Jewish slaves, didn't build the pyramids. The Bible doesn't say that the Jews built the pyramids. The Bible says that the Jews were enslaved by the Egyptians, and that's all it says. So whether they could have been tending the fields or whatever it was, it just says that there's a period of slavery. It didn't say, and then the Jews built the pyramids, right? Type stuff. So I'm totally under the impression that a earlier civilization, you could go, because no one knows, you could go into saying the Nephilim did it, that someone maybe a giant civilization built these huge, gigantic structures. And then, as you're saying, maybe not for the pyramids in general with the whole mud flood thing, but that civilization was wiped off the face of the earth. And then another civilization came in and took over and said, all right, well, this is ours now. Because,
Yeah.
you know,
Well, I mean,
Who
just
else near the
look at
plains,
this look at the Sphinx. You can see that the Sphinx was flooded. I mean, even they admit
sure,
to
it's got
that.
the lines, right?
Yeah, and we know that
Yeah.
Egypt used to have these big forests. You know, it
Mhm.
wasn't always like a big desert, and you know, you would have to have some type of timber to sustain a civilization. You can't have all those people living out where, you know, in the sand and all that kind of stuff. So deforestation
Right.
played a part in it. And then you look into the Amazon, you see that the Amazon was man-made. Like there's evidence to suggest, or it basically proves that the
Right,
Amazon
the
rainforest in
soil,
South
right?
America.
No, it has
Yeah,
to
it
deal
was
with the
like,
lining of the trees, but they're
yeah,
all in rows and shit.
yeah,
That and
Oh,
the soil is like terra preta. It's like super. It's like a man-made soil that has like what's the word? Self-replicated itself. It's like a super fucking soil, but they can tell that it was developed by humans.
right.
yeah.
That's what
So
makes
we
it so
get
rich.
we get into stuff like that, and we're talking about thousands of years ago. And then we get into the whole phenomena of a pyramid being in South America, a pyramid being in Mesoamerica, a pyramid being in what's now Africa, pyramids being all at the same time with supposedly no way of communicating with each other. We were
Mhm.
building pyramids all over the planet at the same time. You know, yeah, you could argue that it's just, you know, geometry, and it's just, you know, smart people are going to come to the conclusion that, you know, a building like this is a good idea. You could argue that, but it doesn't change the fact that it happened, regardless of, you know, whatever. But then you look at certain people, and they're still building, you know, more primitive structures, like they haven't evolved to build anything of any, like, you know, significance.
So what are you
Yeah.
proposing? Are you proposing like the Von Daniken Chariots of the Gods view on this, or
You know, I read those books when I was a kid because my friend's mom, she was into all that kind of stuff, new age shit. She actually had Chariot of Gods and was it Fingerprints or Footprints of the God? All
yeah,
those kinds of books from that Swedish guy or Danish guy or whatever it was.
yeah, Eric Von
So
Daniken?
yeah, right, you said it, yeah. No, I don't know. I mean, that's kind of getting into like ancient aliens kind of shit, and I'm not really like down with that. I don't believe in aliens for a lot of reasons, but I just
So
think that no, go ahead.
so what's your best guess, man?
My best guess is that we have been limited, and our capabilities and potential have been bridled somehow. Like
Mhm.
we've been throttled essentially. And I think that ancient civilizations were tuned into some type of knowledge, a more spiritual connection to the creator, perhaps, or just less distract. I don't know. There was something that drove people to be able to not only create civilizations that worked more or less, but also were able to look at a problem such as building a building and be able to do it. So you look at the way that buildings are built now, they're very cheap, and you know, like especially homes are made out of plywood and all this kind of
Mhm.
shit.
Yeah, we
And so
got
you
it
say,
done.
well,
Basically.
yeah, it's they're saying, well, it's resource, you know, limited resource, and you know, profit driven, blah blah blah. But I think that if you looked at it from a perspective of, well, why didn't they have television sets? Why didn't they have cell phones? Why didn't they have all this stuff? And somebody, I think it was some Native American, he said they could have, but they didn't want them.
Yeah.
In other words, like they were intelligent enough to build buildings and have, you know, forms of government and written language and poetry and philosophy and medicine. But when it came to like, oh, do we want to create a television set? Like, what was stopping them? All the resources were there. Everything that we've ever created is already here. We don't get like drop shipments from
Right.
Mars or Jupiter or anything. All the minerals, so when you think about, okay, so according to the Gregorian calendar, we're in the year 2024, almost 2025. after the death of Christ. Why did it take so long to make a television set, right? Like we had other things. We had magnifying glasses. We had telescopes, at least since the time of what? Who was like the first astronomer or whatever? One of those Greek
Galileo.
guys.
Galileo.
Yeah, I think he came even Copernicus. I think that even came even later because I think the Egyptians and the Greeks and shit, they had some form of astronomy and astrology. So it really does beg the question: were these people intelligent enough to avoid creating things that they would see as detrimental to the growth or the overall wealth or
Right.
of
Like,
the
why would
civilization?
why would we purposefully create something that's going to dumb everyone down, essentially?
I talk about this a lot
Mhm.
on my show, actually, and I don't actually, I didn't give it this label, but it's Lucifer's technology, right? Jake, you'll like
Mhm.
this. I think I've talked about this briefly before. It's the idea that demons, right? Demons essentially have possessed or manipulated people into creating certain technologies, right, to help them do their thing, right? And in my opinion, their thing is to like feed off of us energetically, right? So they've done things like teach us how to make fucking weapons, teach us how to make, gunpowder, teach us, and I don't mean like literally show up out of the sky and teach us something, like possessing people and causing them to take
Well,
paths
not only
and
that,
create.
but just like the invention of the smartphone. I mean, geez, the
Yeah.
generation, the younger generation these days. I mean, you can't. They're so used to watching 15-second clips off of Instagram and YouTube and all that sort of stuff. You try to tell them, yeah, read the Bible for the truth, and they're like, oh, reading. They
So
can't do it.
This is the whole thing, right?
It's
If
all part of it.
this spiritual realm is outside of time, right? I would assume. So these beings, these demons, they have the ability to know what would happen if, right? That's all I'll say. They'll know what
Sure.
happened if. So I think that they've just spent the better part of the last few thousand years manipulating humanity, like you were saying, dumbing us down, bridling us somehow, like doing the things
Mhm.
to slow our progression. And that thing might just be introducing technologies that were just beyond what like our natural human selves really should be playing with, right?
Yeah, and I know that a lot of people would argue, especially like Redditors or like Fedora Tippin kind of, atheist type people, science worshippers, scientisms, uh, because that's what it is. It's not real science. It's called scientism, and that's a separate thing. But what I'm saying is that I know a lot of people
Not
would argue,
though.
well,
Go ahead.
oh,
It's
it's
not.
okay.
It's the same thing. I think it's not even separate. I think it is exactly what we're talking about. Scientism is Satanism, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, well, it's not real. Well, we could get into that later. But what I was going to say was, I know that some people would say that, well, what about proton accelerators? What about the space program? What about the advances in advancement, medical technology?
Sure.
What about all this? I'd say sure, but that's a separate thing that's hoarded from the general population. In other words, you have to be a part of that to understand that. But then when that's coupled with the breakdown of society, like we see all these what's it called, societal crimes, quality of life crimes are up, like the fentanyl crisis, the homelessness, the shoplifting, the rampant over sexualization, the just all the degenerate shit.
Yeah.
If we were a truly advanced civilization, we wouldn't have those societal ills. We would have dealt with that before we said, oh, let's build a rocket ship, or let's make sure that we keep these people educated and of a certain moral stock before we try to make an entertainment industry or something like that.
The internet, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna be honest with you. I think that I don't know about the whole connection between Satanism and scientism. But for those listening that may not understand what we're talking about when we're talking about scientism is the extreme belief in science and putting everything that you believe, that you hold dear and believe on a pedestal when it comes to what science is telling you. For example, the masks, right? The face diapers is just
Yeah.
one example. Now, whether or not that's Satanism, right? Old, just kind of give you an idea of how the shows kind of run, right? We've got three guys with three different views of how the world works, right? Jake's a Christian. I'm not. Jeff is Jeff, right? He does Jeff stuff. I don't know what Jeff is because some days I think he is. Some days I don't know if he is. But the thing is I honestly think that people are just stupid, right? I think that for the most part that these technologies are made and they are made, right, because it's all pushed by a currency, right? Something that people are falsely believed in, thinking that is going to make your life better. So they push out this technology out into the public. People buy it because they believe that it's going to get better, right? That's a currency to them. It's not necessarily a green dollar in their hand, but it's something, right? It's that shot of the feel good hormone in your mind that you have something in your hand that you paid a stupid amount of money for, and that makes you feel good.
Let me
But
just interject real quick. The technology could be the money. Go ahead.
yeah, I get it, right? And you're not wrong, but the gist is that it's a currency both ways, right? You have the manufacturer who's making this product, and it doesn't matter what it is. It's literally fucking anything at all, anything that a human being wants. I read books, a lot of them, right? You could somebody can put out a book on Bigfoot, and I'm gonna go buy it. That's my vice, right? When it comes to technology and scientism, I believe it's all kind of backed by a monetary value, and it's not necessarily a monetary value in your bank account. It's more of a pride or I feel better about myself kind of thing for doing this, and it's not always because you make yourself feel like a better person, but it's because you feel better about your life situation. You own something more. You're doing something more with your life. But really, all you're doing is looking at this plastic and glass brick in your hand and doing nothing with your life. Which I could see where you guys are talking about, like the connection to Satanism, right? But I believe that Satanism is a literal religion. Right. It's
of course. And that's what I want to say. We all know, everybody who listens to the show or my show, they know that I speak hyperbolically, and most of it is for the click, right? For the clip. And
yeah.
Love it or hate it. It's just, it's part of the game. Don't hate the player. Right. So, but when I say scientism is Satanism, right, I'm not literally saying like referring to the religious beliefs of Satanism, right? What I mean is that it is the structure that has been placed before us of this like ultimate belief of knowledge, right? Like this new age we're moving into, this age of knowledge, whether you want to get into new age shit or not, that's what we're moving into. And this like you said, it used to be the guy in the robe was like the religious leaders, and all of the information, all of the truths about reality came from this man in this robe, right? And nowadays we all know it's true. They're trying to do their best to kill God and all of the gods, right? And they're trying to put forth this new God, which is knowledge, which is scientism, right? It's the new lab coat is the new Pope coat, right? That's the idea.
Mm-hmm.
It's not literal Satanism, you know.
No, I mean, I understand. I get it. I'm just not a believer in the spiritual warfare, I guess. Sure. Right. I believe that.
I mean, I can respect that. Yeah.
Human beings are just evil and stupid, right? There's nothing about us that wants to do good. Typically, even the people that are out there planting trees and, working at soup kitchen. I'm not saying that everybody, but there are a lot of people out there that are doing this stuff just so that they can get an Instagram like. You know what I'm saying? It's not necessarily that they're out there doing it for good. I think that just by nature we suck. We really do. Yep. And it's just a standard of being human is that, we're lazy, we're stupid, we don't, work hard unless you can identify that about yourself. Like I've been on this almost year-long journey now where I've been identifying things in my life that were wrong, and I've been working to correct them. And it's been it's been a long year. It's actually been 11 months so far, but my life has completely changed. I've become a completely different person. And you can see all the benefits that come from it. I think the problem is that a lot of people are ignorant and blind to the things that they're doing in their lives. They think that something such as hitting like a retweet is beneficial to them because they're going to get an extra follow or a sympathy like or something, and they get that dopamine hit that doesn't actually mean anything. There's no value to it whatsoever. Where
Yeah,
they
but I
could.
think going back to the point about like the old world versus the new, though, is like what happened, what caused the shift between these old cultures who wanted nothing to do with these micro dopamine hits, right? Like they were more concerned about
Who's to say
being
that
in
they didn't?
tune. Well, I mean, that's a good point. We don't know.
We just don't know what their dopamine hits were, dude. It could have been throwing a psychedelic leaf in their mouth and chewing on it.
That's true, but I would
Right?
argue that would be a much better way to get your micro dopamine hits than TikTok.
Yeah, but
Right.
who's to say
So-
that if they had the technology, if they had it, they wouldn't have used it?
I'll say something to fill up the silence. The dopamine hits, if we're going back, say, thousands of years or something, some pre, especially if it was like pre-diluvian, which pre-diluvian that ties into the mudflood because that means before the deluge. So we're talking about the golden age.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about before Christianity, before possibly even before the Babylonian civilizations, or even the Sumerians, which supposedly are yeah. But we could attribute this as more as recently as the Greek age or something like that. Is we got our dopamine, humans. I shouldn't say we because we weren't there, but humans, men and women and children, they got their dopamine hits by the simplest things, the things that we take for granted nowadays, the things that we think are just somehow inherently supposed to be gifted to us. So it would be like holding a person's hand, getting a kiss on the cheek, consummating a relationship by producing a child,
Mhm.
like seeing the elation of a woman being elated by the fact that she's carrying a child, a man being elated by looking at his woman's or his wife's pregnant belly and saying, "Oh, my child's in there." That's a dopamine hit.
Yeah.
Winning a fight, like beating somebody up, that'll give you a thrill. Solving a
Having a
puzzle.
successful hunt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Back. Yeah.
Solving a puzzle, creating art, finishing an art piece of art, like a painting or a piece of pottery or some shit. The thing is that I recently read an opinion piece or and it said not everybody's supposed to have a wife or a girlfriend or a boyfriend or whatever. We as a civilization have started to assume that everybody's supposed to have somebody. Now, I'm grateful for my wife. I'm grateful for my children. I'm grateful for my friends and all that kind of stuff. But when it comes to romantic, intimate kind of stuff, when you look back in history, and this ties in with the dopamine hit thing too, we acted more animalistic in our breeding practices. In other words, we had to do a lot to woo a woman over, to prove that we were genetically sufficient to reproduce with. And so we have this phenomena, they're calling it the epidemic of loneliness. And they're trying to kind of psyop people, kind of gaslight people and saying, either if you don't have a partner, there's something wrong with you, or if you don't have a partner, we're going to figure out a way to like prescribe you, companionship. In other words, like we have dating apps, we have all these tools, right? Well, we didn't have those in the old days. In the old days, you know, you had to like meet somebody and fall in love, and you know, the whole thing was very organic. So I think that certain people are just predispositioned to being, you know, loners or whatever, and that's okay. They're not bad people. It's just we've created this culture where if you're rejected, that it makes you feel really bad. Because
Yeah.
people want to have companionship, they want to have affection, they want to be able to start a family, whatever their end game is. But we've created. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry, man. I don't mean to cut you off. I'm trying to squeeze in there.
Yeah.
I think that it is perfectly natural, and I'm not saying it's good, right? But I think it's perfectly natural by human nature to where when we get comfortable with something, especially with our environment, our living conditions, that we become this softer version of ourselves, right? There was an experiment done a long time ago. I think it was called the Mouse Utopia experiment. You guys ever heard of this before? It's absolutely it's a phenomenal experiment where these scientists, we honestly should do a whole episode on it. I want to say like the technical name for it is like Universe 20 something, right? Where they created this perfect rat utopia, and they let them mate and reproduce, and they gave them all the food they wanted, all the comforts that they wanted, entertainment, everything that they possibly wanted. And what they saw was that instead of them becoming more communal and wanting to be together, they became more separate. And then the males became fragile and the women became aggressive. And then you started getting, you know, a couple generations down the line, they became unable, it would seem, to even try to mate. Men, the male rats were completely, not wanting to mate with female rats. We should talk about this one day, because it's super super interesting, and there's got to be some sort of video that we can bring up really quick to look at, which I can bring up. But I think basically what you're seeing in civilization now is this experiment on a much larger scale, and I think that life is just too easy for us, and that we need something a little harder in our lives. You know, it's funny because I've been doing a ton of research into the John Teeter time travel legend, and one of the things that John Teeter said, because he comes back from the year 2036 after a second civil war in the United States, and a short nuclear World War III, is that he comes back and he says that I'm not going to help you get past any of this. I'm not going to ruin anything. You guys need this. This needs to happen because society needs this hardship to be able to reset itself. What do you got there?
I think this is what you're talking about, right? John B. Collins'
Yes.
Mouse Utopia experiment.
Yes. Yes, this is exactly it. That is the Mouse Hotel or whatever he called it. Absolutely interesting stuff. We should we could talk about this right now, but honestly, we could dedicate an entire episode to this.
I mean, the problem with that is that I'm gonna say the hard truth about it is that if we were in the era of, say, our grandparents' generation, right, where things were still tough, right? My grandpa was working since he was 10 years old out in the fields. Then became
was walking
age,
to
joined
and
the
from school
military,
uphill
went
both
to
ways.
war, you know, all that sort of stuff. A significant portion of the population would not exist anymore, and that's namely the people that don't work with their hands, Silicon Valley type people, right?
Or would we have a tougher society?
The folks that have the office jobs, the folks that have the folks that are, you'd consider them loners, you know, skinny nerds that play video games all day long, don't have really any social skills, stuff like that. Like yes, it would be beneficial to the growth of the population and bring out the strong men that can do tough things, but you would have a significant amount of the population expire during that. So say there was another civil war in America or something like that. I don't know, or another Great Depression or something, you know, or we had to literally, you know, arm ourselves to fight off another country that was trying to invade us type stuff. Those worthless people would either be captured or killed. And then all the strong people, that men and women that were willing to stand up and say, no, this isn't happening, would be the only ones to survive, which would right the course. But the problem is that because it's been so lax and been so cushy for so long, it's like that saying, what is it? Hard times create hard people create easy times create soft people, and soft people create hard times, or something like that, right?
Yep.
It's like
Yeah.
it's like that whole rotation. So
It's a cycle.
yeah, so yes, that would be of benefit, and yes, it would kill an awful lot of people, certainly the people that just hold useless positions, or you know, that what they say, like, so I used to follow this guy, Bear Independent, on YouTube. I just haven't watched his stuff in a really long time, but he's a pretty hardcore prepper, but he does like videos on like the caloric intake per day per person for an average size adult, you know, what you should need if you're stockpiling food, blah blah, all this sort of stuff, and how to work your land, how to make things yourself, you know, basic mechanics, you know, first aid, military tactics, things like that. But they had some thing that they always said, and it was like the difference between your neighbor you say hello to every day before you get in your car to go to work, the difference between that person and someone who's willing to kill you for everything that you have is like 5 meals.
Yeah.
And it's just like, and then also, you know, say there was an EMP strike on the nation, 80% of the United States population would be dead within the first month from starvation, from unsanitary conditions, all that sort of stuff. You know, people that already know how to hunt, already know how to build things, already know how to weld, already know how to work with their hands, do auto mechanics, things like that. Those people are going to be fine. Everyone else that does some office job that relies solely on the grocery store, dead. You know, it's just like there's nothing that can be done, because you can't, those are skills you can't learn, you know, saying, well, I'm going to live off the land. Well, unless you're already living off the land, you're going to die. Right. Yep. Type stuff. So it's just like, yeah, I mean, that's the unfortunate thing that we're looking at here, is that, you know, should the next cataclysmic event happen, or the next war happen, or the next civil war happen, you're looking at such a significant amount of human lives lost. I mean, it's horrible to think about, but honestly, like, the way that the world is right now and the way the climate is, we're probably way closer to that than we're even thinking about in this episode.
Well, the thing too about that, because I remember when there was all of that going on, my first kind of exposure to that way of thinking was probably around Y2K.
Sure.
So 1999 going into 2000. And then nothing happened. And then there was kind of a lull in that general community. But then around the Obama years or so, you started seeing these kind of mimetic posts, not like the memes that we have nowadays per se, but more like the spread of quote unquote misinformation or information, depending on your perspective, about FEMA camps and these plastic coffins, and they're going to bury us under Walmart and put us on the trains and take us to, you know, like re-education camps and all this kind of stuff.
I was all in on that, dude.
Yeah. Alex Jones was pushing it pretty hard, you know, some good fear mongering type stuff. But it kind of like lends to the philosophy of like, well, let it happen now while I have the strength. In other words, people prep and they prep and they prep, and they're totally prepared. Cool. And they're living off the land, or they're in a suburban community, but they could totally like self-isolate and survive some type of event, like you were saying, like an EMP or whatever. But then it gets to this point where you're like, I want it to happen because I'm ready. So like let's I hope it happens, because then I'll be on top. Like, this is my chance to be to ascend to a new
Mhm.
level of life, because I'll be like it's like Mad Max.
Sure.
You know,
Yeah.
if you were prepared to be humongulous or whatever the guy is that has like the mask and shit, it's like you wouldn't want it to happen when you're 60, 70 years old, even though you got plenty of food and you know how to work with your hands and all that shit.
Mhm.
You'd want it to happen when you're in your prime of your life, when you're in your 30s or 40s or something like that, or maybe even your 20s. So my dad used to tell me the same shit, because he was a strong guy, and he was really tough and shit, and he didn't like weak people. And so he used to tell me the same thing when I was a kid. I got kind of exposed to this way of thinking. He said, all these fucking people will be fucking dead, and we'll just go into their houses and we'll start taking their shit. That's how he looked at it, you know, because we were in a suburban area. He's like, when these people start fucking dying, we'll just take their shit, and we'll, you know, and he had guns and, you know, all that kind of stuff too.
Sure.
So what I'm saying is that he was ready. He was always ready. He was like, let it happen now. I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
But he didn't really prep. His plan was like, well, when shit hits the fan, we'll just start killing people.
Hmm.
You know, and I know some people say, oh, but you know, whatever. The point is that eventually you're probably gonna have to kill somebody anyways, because they're gonna try to take your shit. So you're gonna end up killing somebody one way or the other. Because what's the point of prepping with guns if you're not ready to use them? You know, it's like the hippies. The hippie, you try to give a hippie a gun, and he's like, oh man, don't give me, I don't like guns. And then you shoot him with the fucking gun that he didn't want. You know what I mean? To prove that, like, hey man, you should have just taken the fucking gun. So a lot of people, they don't want to prep, they don't want to have any kind of plan. They just want to think, oh well, you know, whatever, it just won't happen. And it probably won't in our lifetime. Hopefully, I don't know. But there's people that are ready, and then there's people that are, they're not ready. And a lot of it has to do with your physical health. I mean, you could, like I was saying previously, you could be totally, you know, supplied, but if you don't have strength, you don't have physical strength, you don't have any
Mhm.
agility, or you can't walk for 20 miles in the middle of the night, you know, to hunt or whatever, or to get to where you're going.
Right.
You know, it's like that movie. I hate saying that too, but it is. It's like that. The Road. Remember?
It's
I
a
don't know if you
good
guys.
movie. It's a good book
Yeah,
too.
it's a good book. It's a good movie, and they were trying to get to the coast or whatever.
Mm.
And it's a fucked up movie and stuff. But I heard that in the book. I actually haven't read the. I've, you know, seen the movie, but wasn't it a mega, like a super volcano?
Man, I'm gonna be honest with you. I haven't read that book in 5-6 years.
Yeah. I can't remember if it was a EMP thing, or if it was a super volcano or
Well,
something.
I want to say it was nuclear fallout, but I
Uh,
mean, you could be right. I don't remember too much about it. I remember it was a man and his son that were kind of this post-apocalyptic world. I have to
yeah.
reread it. It's upstairs in my other bookcase.
Speaking of the apocalypse, man, like I don't know, you guys want to start talking about these drones a little bit at all?
Sure,
Or
sure.
Oh,
Yeah,
fucking
I
A,
got
right?
some
We do.
information. I got some information, but he sounds like he's ready and rearing to go. So I'm gonna let him.
No. You're the
Jeremy's
guest,
been
man.
itching.
You be my guest.
All right, so I've been looking into it a little bit, because, you know, I at first I didn't even pay attention to it. I was like, this is fucking, you know, whatever. Somebody's playing around with their toys. And then it just kept going and going. So I said, all right, listen, I'll look into this a little bit, you know. And I was thinking about today, and I was thinking about going on the show, and I was like, well, just do a little bit of research, you know, and see what I can gather. And obviously, what first comes to mind is some type of psyop, you know, which essentially, you know, everything is to a certain extent. And then, you know, I said, well, this doesn't make any sense, because somebody's got to know who's fucking flying these things. And if they really wanted them out of the sky, they could just go up there and just knock them out of the fucking sky. Like, what's the big deal? I heard about the nuclear briefcase that's missing and that they're looking for it, but these things have been flying around since, I think technically October or November. November for sure. So at least a month or so.
Well, they were over Langley first.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, there's obviously some credence for, you know, there's evidence to suggest multiple theories. But what I found the most interesting was I was on Threads. I don't know if you guys ever go on there, that Instagram, Twitter kind of thing.
Mm-mm.
But I pop in there sometimes. I was on there and somebody left a comment and his username was like Pudgy Pilot or something like that. I mean, you guys can go look up our
Classic.
conversation. And he was a pilot or something. Maybe maybe a hobbyist pilot, maybe some type of private aviation business. I'm not sure. I think I'm leaning more towards a hobbyist. But he flies around. He get pictures of his flights, and he said, "This is so funny," and I'm just kind of saying it because the
Yeah.
tone was sarcastic. He goes, "This is so funny to me because I know what's actually happening." So obviously people were like, "Oh, enlighten us," all that stuff. And he said, "What's going on is it's the media overhyping what's called," and he had an abbreviation for it. It's called a NATAM. It's NAT. No, is it NOTAM? It's a notice. Oh, it's NOTAM. Notice of transportation. It's basically like they put out legally they have to put out a statement saying this is where these things are going to go, and this is. And he said you can look this all up, and he said that it's a Space Force project. It's on a need to know basis. The media doesn't know all this stuff. So I started, conversing with the guy on Threads. I said, okay, I believe you, but like, why are elected local officials and politicians and law enforcement, like, why are they being kept in the dark? Why can't they just come out and say, hey, it's it's an operation, blah blah blah.
Right.
And he said, well, they're stupid too. And he had this very snarky, very cavalier kind of attitude about it. But his general consensus was that it had something to do with Space Force, that had something to do with whatever. It's not a big deal, and you can actually find all this information. And so I said, well, send me a link. And he goes, oh, well, you wouldn't know how to read there's legends and keys, and you can't understand it. I said, well, just send it. So I looked at it, and he was right. I couldn't understand it, but I asked what's the artificial intelligence on Twitter, Grok, the AI bot. I said, hey, what's this NOTAMs, and how does it correlate? What's the connection with these mysterious drones? And the chat AI bot gave me a bunch of shit and it said, yeah, look, here's the announcement for these things. So like somebody knows exactly where these things are going to go, what they're doing. It's just we don't know who for sure. But what pisses me off is if this is true, then you got the governor of New Jersey, Chris Cuomo. Is that no?
Yeah.
That's not Chris.
Yeah.
Is it Chris? Yeah, Chris Cuomo. That's
so.
the fat fuck. Yeah. All right. The one that the one that Trump doesn't like.
Are you talking about Christie?
Chris Christie. Is that who?
Chris Christie.
Yeah.
Okay, Chris Christie. So you got the fucking the governor of New Jersey. You got the local sheriffs. You got all these people. If there's something going on, and it's a need to know basis, and they're just testing some shit, then just tell people that. Like when they did that Operation Jade Helm down in Arizona, when they were, with the tanks and shit, and they were like blowing up buildings, they warned everybody. They said this is a drill,
So-
whatever.
I don't think that's the case, man. I think it's got to be something more like the, I understand like, the dirty bomb, the missing nuke, whatever it is, like that makes sense to me, but it could be a million things
Hey.
like that. Right?
All right. So, old, I don't know how much you know about us, man. I know you know Jeff, but Jake and I, we met in the Navy. We were both naval aviation. We were
They're shills.
maintainers. We are shills. We believe everything that the government says. Everything, chat. Do you hear that? I'm just kidding. But so the big thing going around right now is these new pictures that somebody had gotten. They were pretty clear, and people are trying to paint this as what's called an MQ-8 Charlie, basically an unmanned helicopter codenamed Fire Scout. Jake and I used to work at a command that used to work on the MQ-8 Bravos, which is a smaller version of this unmanned helicopter. I can tell you right now, that's not what it is. 100% not what it is.
Yep.
Without question, if somebody tries to, or if you're watching TikTok or YouTube and someone's trying to paint the picture of this being an MQ-8, it's It's not going to happen. That is not what this is. Even the pictures that the guy provides doesn't look anything like a Bravo or a Charlie. It's not one of, it's not part of that line that what we call TMS or type model series. One thing I can say is that the fact that these are in the air and that so many people don't know what is going on is scary. It's not that it's scary because they're lying to us. It's scary because there's multiple levels of the government that don't know about each other, right? So there's plenty of levels out there that are completely unaware that the other ones even exist.
The left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing.
Correct. Exactly, right? So is this an exercise? I'm telling you right now, this is not an exercise because exercises are not done in public. They go out of their way. They go to these remote locations. Jake, what was the name of that island off the coast of Virginia that we used to fly to? Do you remember? You know what I'm talking about. And then there was an island down in the Bahamas that we used to go to too. What was that one called?
Autec.
Autec, right? So, like when we're doing trials, when we're doing these test runs on things, we're not going to the public. We're not going to go do this over New Jersey. We're going to go into.
Right, we're dogfighting over Key West, so if something goes wrong, the plane crashes into the ocean.
Well, not only that, these things were following a Coast Guard vessel as well. Like they said,
they were following civilians. They were doing all kinds of stuff. I'm telling you right now, man, that there's something going on, and whatever it is it's dangerous. Something bad is happening, and I'm not trying to fear monger. I'm not trying to get people fucking riled up, but I feel like it's got to be some sort of public service announcement because something is going on. If there is a reaction like this, drones in the air that are following FAA regulations with what we call directional lighting, right? Green and red being on port and starboard, and then you have a white light in the back, and then a searchlight in the front.
Whitney and I saw one.
Right. I mean, these are American or human at first. Let's just get that out of the way, right? This isn't fucking aliens.
Right.
Okay.
It doesn't really matter.
Well, we can all agree on that. Yeah.
All right. So the only thing that can kind of sway me back to the alien thing is that there are some people that claim to have videos of orbs with them. And then there's this one video going around out of Arizona right now. And if anybody's unaware of the scope of all of this right now, is the majority of the reporting is coming out of New Jersey, but we're getting reporting all across the fucking world right now, just FYI. But there is a
mist,
drone. It's not the Mist. It's not Project Arrowhead, my friend.
Fuck.
I saw that movie, by the way. Skeeter. So, where was I? You fucked me up.
I'm sorry, man.
They're all over the
coming
world.
from all over the world. Yep, not just New Jersey.
Right. So there's this video out of Arizona right now where a drone is flying up to this orb, and this orb shoots down the drone. Okay. One thing you gotta realize is that there's a lot of AI going on right now. I don't trust just one video. Wait for more to come out. See what else is out there. That's the only video that I've seen where we're seeing this orb of light in the same location as these drones. Now, we know there's drones, right? We absolutely 100% know there's drones. It's fucking everywhere. Everyone's taking videos of it. I'm getting videos from people all across the country, myself, of sending videos of drones. Jake got a video from somebody in Minnesota the other day. I got family down in Chicago. I got family in New Jersey. I got all this stuff in Florida.
One of my coworkers called me last night while I was streaming, said that he saw one like an hour away from me in Casadega, which is like the most.
There was one right over Jake's house yesterday.
Yep,
that's insane, bro.
I had Whitney take a video while I was driving. I was like, "What the hell is right over our neighborhood?"
Yeah, like literally, Jeff, the neighborhood you were in just a few months ago, there was one right above us. But
see, what are they looking for, dude?
But that's the thing. That's the thing, right? And this is where the theories come in, right? What are they looking for? I heard you say something about a nuclear warhead. There's a funny thing that happened about 3 months ago, 8 nuclear warheads just disappeared from Ukraine. Okay. And then if you look at the location of where the drones are starting, and they are expanding out from this port town in New Jersey, right? If you look at the original reports, they all started off in a town in New Jersey, which is right next to a port, right? Incoming and outgoing goods. One of the theories is that there was some sort of weapon. I don't want to necessarily attach the nuclear word to it, but let's just say that it is for some dramatic effect, right? Let's say that there's a nuclear weapon on U.S. soil. Well, look at all the areas in which the drones are starting to pop up in clusters, right? So there's a cluster of them in New Jersey. There's a cluster of them in South Lake Michigan, where there's 2 major ports, one in Chicago and one in Gary, Indiana. Then you have one in San Diego, where there's another big group of clusters of these things showing up. Then you have one up in Seattle, and then you have one down in New Orleans, and then you have one in a couple locations, including Jacksonville and Tampa Bay, Florida. Now, they're looking for something that's coming in by boat. I can tell you that right now. Okay. So Gary, Indiana, and Chicago, Illinois, those are your major hubs for shipping when it comes to the Great Lakes and everything coming in through the Atlantic Ocean. So as you're starting to see these search areas expand, obviously they're expanding with how much time is going by, but you're now seeing, like, sticking with Jersey, you're starting to see the states of Pennsylvania, you're starting to see Maryland, Virginia, Connecticut, Rhode Island, New York. All of these states are starting to see these things more and more, and it seems like every day that you wake up, you're starting to see more and more added to the list. Now,
Bro, did you watch or listen to the recent Sean Ryan show episode from Thursday with Sarah Adams?
I did.
Dude, freaking Al Qaeda teaming up with ISIS, teaming up with the Taliban, saying they have 1,000 trained fighters in the United States, and they want a death toll of 60,000 Americans.
60,000. Yep. That's fucking nuts.
When I see this stuff, that's what I think about.
Yep. But the thing is I think that there's more going on here, and I think that, if I know a lot of people out there are trying to play the tough guy with this particular event, and like, man, this is stupid. You guys are dumb. Stop talking about it. The fact that these are FAA regulated craft, and they're telling you not to shoot them down. They're telling you not to fly your drones near them, and if you do, they're arresting you. When these things land, they are being confiscated, or whenever they crash, they're being confiscated, because we have a couple of them already that have crashed in Jersey, and they're setting up barricades around these things with hazmat gear. I think the hazmat gear itself is kind of just a show to dissuade people from going anywhere near them. It's an easy way to say, hey, don't go near this shit, and people just stay away. But the thing is that we do have technology called nuclear sniffing. You ever heard of it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. This technology exists, and it can be easily attached to drones. Okay. My biggest fear is that there is a nuclear weapon, if not multiple nuclear weapons, on the homeland right now that they're looking for. And I honestly, if you always prepare for the worst, right? Hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. And I think that's something that, we as United States citizens need to do. We need to kind of understand that this could be a very, very serious situation, and just pray that it's not, and that when it comes out that this was just a drill, be like, okay, cool, even though they most likely found the weapon and confiscated it, and they just told the public that it's fine.
Yeah, I mean, that's sorry, go ahead.
No.
I was just gonna compliment his knowledge on that, and given your background in the armed forces, like, I'm open to anything. Like, I'm not like hard. Like, I haven't really been studying it, so I don't really know. I just unfortunately, what you said is probably the most plausible.
Yeah, it doesn't seem unlikely. Now, the only thing that I can think other than it being like a nuke that's lost somewhere is like maybe they're looking for these cells of individuals, right? These
Mm-hmm.
people who might be gearing up to do some serious, you know, attacks, right? Guerrilla style attacks
Yeah.
on us.
And
Well,
facial recognition. Good.
No. I was thinking about what you had said about Gary, Indiana, and Michigan and New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
We know that there's a lot of. I mean, once again, we're kind of going off the official narrative here, but sometimes it's fun to play both sides.
Yeah.
For the sake of conversation, for the sake of argument, we know that according to the sources, that there's a lot of these so-called sleeper cells of like Islam Jihad, in Michigan, in New Jersey.
And
So I
others.
thought about that. Yeah, and I thought about that. I thought about, oh, are they trying to find weapons? Maybe they're trying to find people that are manufacturing uranium. The only problem is like you said, there's these clusters. So I think it's something bigger than that because if these drones were capable of detecting a certain amount of radiation or a certain amount of, it's like, well, they've been looking since November. They've been looking for at least a month, right? So what's going on? Like this is because they don't know, and so they're trying to cover all their bases and look in multiple parts of the country. I mean, like I said, I'm open. I'm open to whatever. But we know. I think one thing that we can all agree on is that if the United States military or the government or whatever wanted those things out of the sky, they could take them out of the sky.
Absolutely.
All
100%.
right.
For sure.
So to the skeptics or to the people who think that they're aliens or like whatever the fuck, or Chinese fucking thing, like that fucking air balloon thing, that was a whole debacle. We can all agree that those things are still up because the government wants them to be up. And I think we can all agree that the government knows more than they're telling us for, trying to prevent widespread panic or more
Mhm.
speculation. But I think we can also hopefully take some comfort that if they're looking for something, that it won't go off or it won't be used in a particular way because there's so many eyes on the situation. I mean, we can at least
Perhaps.
maybe.
Perhaps. I mean, it is curious to me that I have a video queued up of John Kirby talking about, how he, like, they don't know what they are, but they're not a threat, right? So it's like, and this is the thing that's going around right now. It's like, how do you know they're not a threat if you don't know what they are? So obviously you must know
Mhm.
what they are. But it just seems weird to me that they would that would be the excuse. Like if they were actually looking for a bomb somewhere like that, I feel like they would just tell us they're looking for something else rather than just give us like, because the thing is like the whole world is tuned in on it now because they're giving us this, we don't know what it is, right? Where they could have just been like, no, these are drones that look for shit. What they're looking for, I can't tell you, but just know that we're looking for something, right? And I think
Yeah.
that's what they would probably do. Because then if it's serious enough to be a nuke, right? Like if it's that serious, I feel like there would be at least some layer of a public announcement. It would be like, hey, just so you guys know, we are looking for something. Can't tell you what it is. Don't panic. But if you see anything out of the ordinary, we have some tip lines for you to call, right?
Mhm.
And that would be the kind of narrative, I think, if it was a nuke.
Has any civilian tried to use one of their drones to get close enough to
Yeah.
these drones?
Well, I've
Yes.
seen reports of that, but apparently the one video that I've seen of somebody saying that they did this, apparently that guy's an FBI agent or an
Yeah.
FBI informant. So it's like, okay, well, I already don't trust it because it's just too convenient, too odd.
Yeah.
Well, there's been a couple of times where people have tried to approach them with their own drones. I mean, there's been a couple shots taken at them. I mean, but what seems to be the common factor in response to some of this stuff is that they seem to be getting either arrested or approached by law enforcement.
Yeah, don't shoot the drones, by the way. You're going to go to
Well,
prison.
here's the
because-
problem is that
And you might kill somebody on accident.
drones, especially large drones, are considered aircraft by the FAA. So whether they are manned or unmanned. If you shoot at them, it's the same penalty as if you shot at a passenger airplane.
Yeah.
Federal
Mhm.
prison,
So
big-
you
big
you
boy
go to prison. So it's like you can't shoot them down, and that's where it really gets hairy, because it's like, at what point? So it's like, since drone technology has come out, people have used drones for all kinds of stuff versus like shooting their videos for YouTube, or spying on their neighbors to see them undressing for some voyeurism type stuff, right? And there is some amount of like space above your home that's considered like your space, right? Where people
Mhm.
can't fly their drone up
That's,
to you.
I think it's like
Your
12. I
kids
think it's like
know.
12 feet. It's like
Yeah,
12 feet.
something like that. So, but anything past that, you're not legally allowed to shoot a drone out of the sky, because you might think it's a drone. It might end up being a news helicopter, right? Something
Mhm.
like that, right?
Yeah.
It could be a police helicopter. It could be any number of vehicles, because some of these drones are quite large. The one that me and Whitney saw was huge, right? It was just like what they said, like the size of a minivan. With the distance of the anti-collision lights and all that sort of stuff. Like it was crazy big. Like I don't know who else could have something that's that expensive except for the military or something like that, right? But regardless, you can't just shoot something up out of the sky just because it's flying above your house and you don't like it. That will land you in federal prison.
Yeah, and I've seen, some reports about people trying to like point lasers at them and shit,
Mhm.
and disrupt them. I think if people thought or knew, depending on the reality, but I think if people thought that they were looking for a nuke, they wouldn't be doing that. So we kind of have this dilemma where if they don't tell people the truth, you might actually disrupt the point of the whole thing.
Right.
Oh,
And,
I want to take a second, just a second away from this. I want to. Oh, Jeff, did you see that guy on YouTube?
Yeah, I saw it, dude.
I'm gonna share this real quick, just so that this guy can get his few seconds of love. We got a guy by the name of David R here who asked if we can see their prior posts. I said we cannot. He said, ready to subscribe. You have one person, me watching. Will you discuss my post? I said, if it's about the subject, I'll personally read it. He said, good. Bye, narrow-minded goofballs.
All
Hey,
right.
guys,
All right.
that's probably digital ass hat.
It probably is. Bye-bye.
Bye. This isn't an airport. No need to announce your departure. We don't care. Bye.
Sorry, I just needed to make sure that he got his few seconds there. Shit, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt the flow.
oh, it's okay. I was just saying, I think, yeah.
Go ahead, brother. Go ahead. I have nothing.
Oh, no,
important
yeah.
to say.
I was just saying, if this thing is an ends to a mean, like we're trying to, find something, or they're trying to find something. I just think that, at a certain point, they might have to start being a little bit more honest. Otherwise, the whole thing's going to get like screwed up. And then also, what I think I saw something else. It was my imagination, but I thought I saw something about how one of them crashed in
Yep.
some woods, and then they like
Mhm.
immediately like just
Descended on it. Yeah.
Yep.
descended on it and section or what's that called?
Quarantined it off.
Quarantine.
Quarantined it off. Yeah, so people couldn't come in and whatever. So I mean, we have to look at it like that. Like the people that were sent in, who was sent in to recover it. If we can figure out who was sent in to recover it, then we can have a definitive answer to who knows what it is. So was
Is it
it?
possible that they're not actually looking for anything, but they're setting us up for a false flag? As if
I want to know what
were
the distraction is.
Well, this is my.
I don't think it's a distraction, man. I honestly think that they're just not going to tell you because it has to be top secret right now. They have to do this stuff. They're only flying these things between 5 p.m. and 11:30. That's
So
it.
it's not a nuke. It's not a nuke. Then it's not that important. This is my point. So, like, what I'm thinking is my thought process here is because it's clearly not important for enough to be a nuke, because they wouldn't stop and do it only between certain hours and blah 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 blah. So it must be, in my mind, a psyop, or they're planning a false flag. They're doing the drones. They're letting the narrative see. I bet you the narrative about them looking for a dirty bomb was probably put into the zeitgeist by the intel communities, and that's what's top secret. And then
Mm.
what they're going to do is they're just going to make us be afraid of the possibility that these things could happen.
Keep us in suspense.
Mhm.
Exactly. Keep us
Mhm.
in suspense, right?
Well,
Like there is
I mean,
no real crisis. It's a manufactured crisis.
well, I didn't know that there was a time constraint on the flights. I mean, that actually does change things, because if they were looking for the nuclear football or whatever you want to call it, I mean, they would be looking 24/7.
Exactly.
Like they wouldn't cease.
Well, I don't think that they would be looking during the daylight if they're trying to be as secretive as they possibly can. I mean, they're grasping at straws with trying to keep the veil down, but they would do it under the guise of night, right? If
Yeah.
they're doing it during the day, it just becomes too public. And I
I mean,
mean,
it's already everybody's
Yeah.
bro. If you
I
pull
get
up
it, I get
X,
it.
it's like the whole fucking.
But I
Yeah.
mean, even like the ones that are out in Arizona, like we're getting videos of these things in daytime, and we are getting a few of them in daytime. Maybe they're just more prominent at night. I'll have to double check that information on the 5 to 11:30 thing. I've seen it pop up a few times, but I think that was like a week or two ago. This might have evolved past that by now. I'm not 100% sure. That could absolutely be old information by now.
I think it's a perfect play for them to be like, they let this happen for a little while. They let the internet explode about it for a little while, and then they come out and say, "Hey, just so everybody knows, we found a nuke, right?" Or whatever the thing was that they tell us, and then they pass some law saying, "Hey, look, now we have to restrict more of your rights because this is another threat that we never even really considered, and it's a good thing we had these fucking drones. And by the way, we're going to use these now. These drones are going to be like all over metropolitan areas. It's going to be like the what do you call it? What's the fucking when you go to the airport and they
FAA
TSA.
or TSA, there it is.
the TSA, right? Like after 9/11, that type of thing. It's like, oh, because of this thing that happened, and maybe an event does happen, or maybe it doesn't, and they just tell us that we almost had an event happen. We were on the precipice, right, of a disaster. So in order to avoid this, we have to have this new organization now. They're going to fly these fucking drones all over everywhere all the time.
Maybe
Well,
it's more
track
like
everything.
they know that Al Qaeda is saying that they're going to kill 50,000, 60,000 people. And so they're going to be like, look,
Could be
we
that.
did our part.
Well, that's it. Let's get back to that, right? Because, I mean, if anybody's unaware, there is this big plot against the United States and Europe and a few other places in the world right now where Al Qaeda is planning terrorist attacks. The information is out there. You just can't get it from your mainstream media because they're absolute garbage. But the fact is that there is a plan on U.S. soil said to be set for next October, but obviously we don't know that for sure.
And we left them billions of dollars of equipment, and we've been paying them hundreds of millions of dollars since
Exactly.
we left
Month, yeah.
Afghanistan for the last
Exactly.
like 2 years. So they have unlimited resources and,
Yep.
and equipment and connections right now.
And we're giving them millions of dollars every month.
So
From-
basically,
from-
what happened is the Taliban, ISIS, and Al Qaeda have joined forces to attack the United States and Europe. And Al Qaeda put out that they have 1,000 trained fighters, which some of them are suicide bombers and some of them
They said
are
10,000, didn't they?
no, it was 1,000.
Was
Could
it?
be more, but yeah, 1,000 trained fighters. Some of them are trained for suicide missions. Some of them are just trained as. Shout out to the Sean Ryan show. His interview with Sarah Adams on Thursday.
She's a
but-
beast, bro.
Yeah, she is. But they said that some of them are set up for basically they'll fight to the death. So they will not surrender. They won't give up. So whether they walk into a shopping mall and just start shooting people like left and right, and then they get swarmed on the police and they literally shoot until the police kill them type people. Whatever that looks like. But Al Qaeda says they want 50 to 60,000 Americans dead,
Mhm.
not including Europe, in a planned strike against the United States. Now, whether that means over in one period of time, several locations, or, you know, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, there's another attack every single
Yep.
day, or a few attacks every single day. We have no idea what that means.
Specifically use the
But-
word coordinated.
Coordinated attack, right? So, and that's Sarah Adams, she was talking about, you know, the thing with ISIS is that ISIS, they have their own, I guess, orders to be able to change their attacks whenever they want to. The incident that she said was that, say an ISIS fighter goes down into the metro and finds that it's not that popping, it's you know, not a rush hour time of the day, there's not a lot of people here, but he knows there's an event somewhere else. He could change his plan that he's been planning to do and just say, well, I'm going to go to this event and suicide bomb myself, right? In this
Mhm.
crowd of people. What people don't understand, what people I think don't realize, and what was a huge eye opener to me, is that the Abbey attack, where we lost 13 of our service members, I think 12 Marines and 1 Navy, was that it wasn't just those 13, it was also 170 Afghanis. So this one suicide bomber detonated himself and killed 170 Afghanis and 13 of our service members.
Yep.
That's insane. So that's churches, shopping malls, farmers markets, things like that. Whenever, you know, this whole drone thing has me thinking like that, you know, I think that the scary part is with the laws we have, as far as like, you can't shoot down a drone, whether it's or a aircraft, whether it's manned or unmanned, because of the FAA and all that sort of stuff. So what if these drones have explosives on them, and they're looking for large groups of people that they could just drop into and then detonate?
I think that they
Yeah.
would have already gotten that, especially within their proximity to New York City, right? And
We
they
might
had
have. But what if they're waiting for large crowds of people to surround these things?
what's the big event that's right around the corner?
Well, the
It's
inauguration.
the inauguration, and I there's a lot of people that are saying that this has a lot to play with that too, you know, because Al Qaeda has also come out and said that they are going to target Trump, right?
Yeah.
They've also
See,
claimed
that's the thing too, because there's going to be, I guarantee, mark my words now, it's going to be a record turnout at this inauguration. There's going to be 2 million people there probably.
yeah.
I was at Obama's inauguration, the first one. Okay,
I would
there.
highly recommend not going to this one.
There was 1 million people at Obama's inauguration. Okay, and it was an ocean of people. I literally climbed the World War II monument to try to get a glimpse of Obama getting inaugurated, right? And like, that was a shitload of people, and there'll probably be twice that many people at this one. So it's not, when I think about that and that image in my mind and what that looked like, it seems so easy in my mind for somebody to just pull up, especially with something like as big as a tactical nuke, like what that would do. You know, you don't have to get anywhere near secure areas where you're getting checked. Like, you could be 1.5 miles away and set off a tactical nuke, and like, game over, brother.
Yeah, that's one thing that's incredible about nukes. You know, there's if they wanted to do the mass casualty thing when it comes to nukes, they would not detonate them on the ground. For those of you that are unfamiliar with nukes, they're actually more deadly if they detonate off of the ground and in the air.
Well, Al Qaeda might.
I mean, and that's the thing, is maybe they find a way to attach a nuke to one of these drones. That would be extremely scary,
You
because
send homeboy in there with a backpack on, like, you know, they don't care about an airburst, man. Like, Al Qaeda doesn't give a shit. You give ISIL a backpack,
but
they don't give a fuck how they blow it up. Like,
yeah,
you
but
know what I mean?
just doing it like 1,000 feet off the ground or 2,000 feet off the ground, you're increasing the range of the blast and the power, the EMP, the fallout, everything 10 times than if it was done at ground level.
I'm not saying I'm not denying that. What I'm just saying is that, like, these fucking third world terror organizations, like, they don't care about that. Like, they'll gladly walk into a crowd on inauguration day with a backpack and blow it up ground level. They don't give a shit about airburst. You know what I mean? Like, enough's enough for them.
Right. And then, you know, what's also interesting is that Sarah Adams, she said that these terrorists, they really rely on dates.
Yeah.
She said that 9/11, there's all sorts of theories as to why 9/11 was the date that was picked. And it was because it was from like 9/11 1922 when some conflict took place. And so they're super specific about like dates and stuff. October 7th wasn't just a random day they decided to attack. It's because George W. Bush started his war with Afghanistan on October 7th, 2001, right? So they used that date as like they're coming back and she said it was like a dry run. What they did on Israel was a dry run for what they're going to do to the United States, except it's not going to be
Here.
taking hostages and running them back over the fence, right? Type stuff. So, I mean, but she said that it's in 20 years of war, there's been so much, they could use it like a date, a certain terrorist was killed, which, you could have 100 different dates that could take place and stuff like that. It's just wild. It's absolutely crazy. And one thing she did say was that Al Qaeda is very well aware of the conspiracies that we have around Building 7. And they like how it divides America so much because we don't have trust in our government. So they want to play on that more to create these weird sort of situations where it would cause us to think that our government was the ones that were doing it instead of them. Like, it's so crazy.
So I pulled up a Google search here to kind of talk about. Now, obviously, the 1,000 or 2,000 feet that I was talking about was way under valued. This is like way past where aircraft are flying for a high altitude burst. But this right here is telling you the height of the burst, right, and how far out it can be felt. Okay, so a 30-mile burst gives you a 480-mile radius. 128 gives you a 1,000-mile radius, and a 308, is that what it says? I can't see, but 1,470-mile radius. Now, they've always said famously that if you did 3 high altitude bursts over the United States, one over the Pacific Northwest, one over the Southern Midwest, and one over the Northeast, you would be able to effectively shut off all electronics across the United States completely. So when they're out there and they're potentially looking for nukes, it would literally take 3 at exploding in high altitude, or what's the one right below it, which is you see right here at airburst, to effectively shut down the entire power grid of the United States.
Yeah, but they're not looking up in the ground, like you said. All these things are flying low, man. They're looking for something on the ground.
Well, that's what that's what I'm saying, man. Is I think that I think it is something serious like a nuke, and I wish I hadn't said the 5 p.m. to 11:30, because that I learned that a long time ago. Because these things have been flying around for over a month now, and then prior to that, they were over Langley Air Force Base. Remember, we had just talked about that. We just talked about that a couple of weeks ago about how they
talked
were
about it in the hearing, in that UFO hearing, the UAP
like that.
hearing.
And that's the only thing that kind of trips me up is why were they over Langley Air Force Base first, and now they're starting to show up randomly over Jersey and stuff. And the only thing that kind of comes to mind is Langley Air Force Base is where they did the tests. That's where they did the dry run. That's where they ran the simulations. That's where they did like, hey, there's this shit going on. They're trying to bring in these nuclear warheads into the country via ship.
If they were on a time crunch, they might not have had the time to like ship all the drones or whatever else out to somewhere else to do this test. They might have just been like, listen, we have them here on Langley. Like, let's just do a quick test, make sure everything's working, and we have to get these things out to start the search.
And that's where they would have done it too. Langley is a
for everyone watching, this is a MQ-8 Charlie.
That's the Charlie.
It
the
literally
Bravo
looks
smaller.
like a police helicopter, but there's no windows. It's all avionics in here.
No, that one's big. That one's pretty big. Jake, bring up the Bravo.
I mean, this is how big it is.
Yeah, Jake and I worked at a command with the Bravo.
Even still, the Bravo's pretty large too. I mean,
Yeah, it's nowhere
taller
near.
it's taller than I am, and I'm 6'1". You know, it's
It's
like
nowhere
that.
near. It's nowhere near a Charlie though. A Charlie is somewhere between a Bravo and an H60.
Yeah, Yeah, they're
It's
pretty big.
Definitely not those for sure, because those things are probably louder than what these fucking drones.
Well,
sound like.
they whine.
Yeah.
It does kind of sound like a drone whine, but it's a bit louder and a bit heavier. But if you listen to reports of people claiming to hear these drones, they're saying that it sounds like an airplane, not a helicopter. They're not saying it sounds like a drone. They're not saying it sounds like a toot, 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 toot of like an H60. They're saying that it sounds like a whine, like an RC radio controlled whine. And I'm sorry, they're saying that it sounds like an aircraft, not an RC radio controlled whine. They're saying that it sounds like a plane, but even the sound of a plane doesn't match what they're seeing in the air. They're seeing a fixed wing aircraft, but it's moving extremely slow. Like they're not moving at hundreds of miles an hour. They're moving at 15, 20, 30 miles an hour. They're not fast. And Jake, since you have it up, why don't you bring up the Triton? Can you bring that up real quick? The Navy Triton. This was another aircraft that I worked on. No, TR. This was an aircraft that I worked on in Pax River, Maryland. I got to see it like 3 times, and that's it. This guy. Now this thing is slow moving, but the thing is that the people are reporting that these things are max size of like a minivan. These things, the Tritons, are way bigger. Way bigger
Even
than
the
a
Predators
They're
are
like-
huge.
Big as like actual planes, right? Like small jets.
Yeah.
Fighter jet.
And these two things that we're showing you, the MQ-4 Charlie Triton and the MQ-8 Bravo.
Even the Predator drones are
oh,
gigantic.
Yeah, the Predator
I mean,
drones are big
they're
too,
huge.
but those things are fast. The Predator drones are fast.
Yeah.
They're not slow moving. The Triton is slow moving, and so is the Fire Scout, the MQ-8 Bravos. Those are slow moving. But I can tell you right now that neither of those are what we're seeing over New Jersey. Trust me, I've seen them fly.
Yeah, that's a big old thing. That thing's huge.
Yeah, it's big and it's unmanned. It's absolutely 100% unmanned. I know it sounds like a joke, but the Fire Scouts are legitimately controlled by Xbox controllers. It's kind of funny.
They're looking for fucking mutants, bro. They're looking for Wolverine. Wolverine's on the loose, and they're looking for him, dude.
Well, Wolverine needs to calm the fuck down.
That's what it is. It's got to be that. It's almost time for me to go, bro. It's bedtime.
Come on, man. We're having a good conversation. Don't do this. Everybody boo this man. Boo him.
Boo.
Boo.
Boo, Jeff.
Boo.
Boo.
Boo. All right. Old. Sorry,
Yo.
man. We kind of started
It's
just
all good.
kind of going down our own rabbit holes there.
I mean, like I said, I'm not well versed in the situation. It sounds like you guys know a little bit more about it, given your background, and we'll just have to wait and see. But you also have to remember the most important thing, is that nothing ever happens.
Yeah, true. 100%.
It does.
I appreciate you, man. You dropped some good knowledge today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am fully unaware of a lot of the stuff that has to do with the mud flood and everything. That's more of Jeff and Jake's cup of tea. So I would absolutely love to have you on again at some point so we can kind of dive into that a little more whenever current events aren't absolutely flooding the airways, man.
Yeah, no, I'll be back. It's all good. I'm sure we'll be in contact. I'd be more than willing to come back and have a more in-depth conversation about whatever I can go in depth on. But yeah, I mean, these drones, like I said, I like to think that we've been through this kind of thing before, and nothing will happen, and blah 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 blah. And there's all kinds of things I could say about, the true nature of what terrorism is, and but we'll just have to wait and see. I mean, we're not guaranteed anything, anyways. We could all get killed by a drunk driver or something. So, um, everything's under control, as they say, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
And you can interpret that, in a lot of different ways, like everything's under control. So
I want to give a quick shout out to the chat tonight. You guys were freaking amazing. Love it. The chat is growing steadily every time we're doing this. Still fairly new to the Twitch thing. Couple new people. PP Winsky, love the name. That's awesome. Thank you for showing up. And MRZ015, thank you for showing up. You guys are new faces. I seen that at least one of them said that they were here because of Old Scary World. So, Old, thank you for showing up, man.
Yeah.
I really do appreciate that.
Skeeter says Taco Bell's new slogan: "Mud flood happens."
Yeah. We did gain a new subscriber today, MRZ015. Thank you for the subscription. Really do appreciate that. You're awesome. You guys have been phenomenal tonight. Tomorrow, I will most likely be going live at some point just to kind of talk about drones. It'll be during the day, during work hours, but the point of it is to get something recorded so that I can post it immediately, because this episode is not coming out for a while. This episode is either coming out sometime in January or February, and by the time that comes out, this stuff will be old news, except for all the cool stuff that Old dropped on us at the beginning of the episode. Before we do go though, Old, can you let everybody know where they can follow you?
Yeah, I mean, Instagram's like the easiest thing, because when you go on the Instagram, you can get to everything else. But on YouTube, I'm Old Scary World. I'm on all the platforms, so you can just, search in there. And then there's oldscaryworld.com for merchandise, for, rare clothes and stuff like that, shirts and stuff that I make. But yeah, basically it's just Instagram and YouTube are like the two most important, but I'm on everything. So yeah, there's that. And then, like I said, you get to one and it'll take you to the other.
Sweet. Yeah, man,
stuff.
I'll have to check out some of your stuff. Impressed with your knowledge, man. Love it.
Yep.
Love
Thanks. Yeah, no, I'd like to come back and talk more about what I'm more versed in, but it was nice because I haven't done a podcast in a while. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man,
Yeah, thanks for being here.
you're welcome back anytime. You got something to say, you just let us know, all right?
Yeah, we'll be in touch.
All right.
Yeah, man. And thanks for joining last night too, man. I didn't realize that you were gonna join like during the live. I would have had it more prepared for you last night.
No, I just, like I said, I was kind of delirious and shit. I had a fever and stuff, so
Oh,
it was
good,
kind of
man.
it was,
we had a good time.
it was kind of funny.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
it's cool.
No, you're good. Old, I'm gonna go ahead and cut off the live stream. It usually hangs out with, at least on Twitch, for a little while longer, but if you can hang tight for a little bit so I can get your audio and video downloaded. It only takes a second. It doesn't take long, but I'm gonna go
just
ahead
don't
and
hang
close
up
out
right away.
Okay.
All right. Well, that has been another episode of the Infinite Rabbit Hole podcast. I would like to say thank you to everybody who showed up to this live recording, and a special thanks to Old Scary World. Make sure you follow him on all of his social medias. I know he's very prominent on Instagram. Please check that out. He's got some good stuff on there. And until next time, travelers, we'll see you right here in the next fork in the path of the Infinite Rabbit Hole. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Jeff,
Bye.
you know the rules. There you go. Old, you got to say bye, man.
Oh yeah. Bye.
Good stuff. Good